Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox back for another episode. And today I'm absolutely thrilled to have Stephan Poschik with me. Stefan, first of all, welcome. And thank you so much for taking the time to visit with me today.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here with you, Tom, and I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Now, our listeners probably figured out that you're from East Texas because of your accent, maybe a little east of Texas. But so tell us originally where you're from.
A little bit more than East Texas, actually originally from Austria, but in the meantime, I live half of the year already in Italy, and I'm also a lot of time here in the States because I'm running two companies here and in Europe, and that's the way how I developed all these crazy accents.
Could you tell us your professional background?
Yeah, of course. I'm actually an entrepreneur since over 23 years. I started my first company when I was still in school. I did a completely different education in wood technology, actually, but I never ever started in the corporate world. But I started in the health and wellness space back then. And over the last 23 years, I founded already 6 different companies, and most of them are related in the coaching and in the coaching and consulting industry. And we have basically 2 main areas what we are focusing on. And one of these is where we work with big corporate groups like Siemens, Toyota, the Volkswagen group. And there we also see a lot of compliance topics where we need to be compliant with them to be able to work with them. Also, all these GDPR things are extremely important to even get contracts with big corporate groups like that. And we help them increase employee engagement and have a better productivity, a better leadership and corporate culture. So that's one of the areas what we are doing. And on the other hand side, we work with small business owners, and we help them grow their business and scale their companies, where we are massively focused on the innovation side. And here again, we have one of the main topics that all the things what they are telling us is confidential, because they are developing sometimes extremely interesting technologies. We are talking about AIs, new platforms, new SaaS models. And that's another area where we have a lot of, where we tap a lot of times in this compliance stuff and GDPR stuff.
Let me go back to culture and engagement.
Yes.
And in September of 2023, the U.S. regulators in the form of the Department of Justice issued new guidance around culture and engagement. Obviously, everyone's always known it's important, but finally the regulators are talking about culture. And when the regulators start talking about it, that gets people's attention. But why is it that engagement can lend itself to not simply a better culture, not simply a culture that will make a company more profitable or have a higher ROI, but just a better place to work and do business ethically and in compliance?
Yeah, that's a really great question, actually. And so in my personal opinion, only companies with engaged workforce and engaged teams are going to survive in the future and have a really good chance, no matter what industry, no matter what country, whatever. Engagement makes or breaks companies. I mean, the statistics are horrible when it comes to that. We have about 14 to 16% of really engaged people. But on the other hand side, we have about 18, nearly 20% of actively disengaged people. And I mean, when you think about this, 1 of 5 employees is actively working against the goals of your company. And so you can have the best rules, the best regulations, the best standards or duty rules in place in your company. But when you're dealing with disengaged employees, they just don't care about these rules. They just don't care about all these things, and they just don't value all these topics which are extremely important for the company, where probably the company or even the manager becomes liable at some point. And it's also horrible for the customer. And guess what? The customers will never ever work with these companies again. And this has a ripple and triple effect inside, because that disengaged people normally have a stronger pull on other colleagues than the real engaged ones. And that's not the best pull they have.
That I'm going to have to go down the rabbit hole on this.
Good.
Because you're the first person who's focused on the disengagement and the danger to a company from disengagement. It doesn't just mean you're paying somebody who's sitting in the crow's nest not doing any work. It could be someone who, as you said, perhaps doesn't care about the rules, perhaps doesn't care about the policies and procedures, all the way to somebody who may be actively not helping the company. And so when in compliance, when we talk about engagement, we don't talk about disengagement. So I was wondering if you could maybe expand on that. And does that, when you have that conversation with a client or potential client, does that resonate with them when you use that term disengagement and explain to them how dangerous it really can be?
Yes, it definitely does. The interesting part is most companies are not aware of the real risk behind disengagement. Yes, they say, yeah, of course, we have motivated people and not so motivated people. We have high turnover, or we have a lot of sick time or sick leave or something like that. That's what they are aware of, because it's easy to see it and easy to measure it, especially sick time or things like that. Turnover also. But one of the things we do very early when we talk to potential new customers is we just ask them about their KPIs. And the weird stuff here is most HR departments don't even know the basic KPIs when it comes to turnover and what money this is basically causing them. And when we start to ask, hey, okay, where is this coming from? What's causing this turnover? What's causing your issues with recruiting? Why can't you find great talent anymore? They just have big eyes, but not really ideas where this is coming from. And when we bring this topic up, disengagement, yeah, they heard about some statistics from the Gallup Institution, which is doing this employee engagement report every single year, or also from companies like McKinsey who are talking a lot about these things. But they completely miss the real risk behind it. What I mentioned before, that disengaged people not just have more turnover or cause more sick leave, but that security issues are with them. We worked, for example, a lot with production companies, so where real safety in the workplace is extremely important. And so when you have disengaged people, they have so much more accidents in the workplace. And we are not talking about, I cut myself a little bit with a paper or something like that. We are talking about accidents. Oh my God, I just lost my hand because my brain was not where my body was. So this is the type of danger we are talking about when it comes to disengagement. Yeah, not, okay, I dropped the water or stuff like that.
You mentioned some of the companies you work with, and it's literally major multinational corporations across Europe to the across the Atlantic to the United States. Are these concepts different in Europe and the United States, or are they consistent with workforces in large multinational corporations?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. Actually, when it came to awareness or when it came to corporate wellness, the US was way in front of Europe a couple of years ago. Yeah, but we are talking about 10, 20 years ago. So when I started with corporate wellness and corporate health management programs in my consulting company, it was nearly 20 years ago already in my first consulting company. The European companies looked at me and said, hey, what are you talking about? You are doing what? Corporate wellness? That doesn't make any sense because our employees get paid. They need to shut up because they have a paycheck every single month and then we are done here. What are you talking about? That was basically 15, 20 years ago. And I experienced a bunch of companies who were already aware on the US market when we entered it about 10 years ago, who are way more aware of all these things compared to European companies. It actually changed a little bit, yeah, because over the last 10 years, especially in the German-speaking regions, so Germany, Austria, where I'm originally from, we have extremely strong unions. And we also have a company or an organization, it's a governmental organization, which is basically like a union for the employees, so not for the white-collar workers. And in the German-speaking regions, the employees are extremely well protected in the meantime by these organizations. So it's pretty hard for the employers to not focus on all these corporate wellness programs anymore, on all these corporate well-being programs anymore, because it would just not work, because they get sued as they And they have serious problems with these governmental organizations because the employees are so well protected. You do not have this in the US here in the same way. Are there unions? Yeah, of course, but the protection is way not where it is in Europe. So it literally changed over the last 10 years. And in the meantime, and then I'm done with this topic. So
oh no, we're not.
No, because I'm already talking so long. So that's what I wanted to say.
I haven't begun to get going.
That's great. I actually like this. I actually really like this because engagement is one of my most favorite topics here. I can go on and on. So at some point, you just need to cut me off. So in the meantime, in Europe, we overdid it. So we overdid it with the social benefits and with the protection of the employees and the workforce. So what do I mean with we overdid it? The employer is always the bad one, no matter how good you treat your employees in the meantime. Even if you are paying them, if you have great benefit programs, awesome treatment for your employees, you can't expect real intense work and labor anymore for them because they are so well protected. So it's already across the edge, in my personal opinion here, that a lot of employees basically just have a pretty good time because they know exactly, even if they don't work hard or if they are not really engaged and if they are not really productive, oh, that's fine because they are so well protected and my employer can't find any more people. So pretty good here, actually. I get a great check. I get a great salary. I don't need to hustle my off. Yeah. And so we really overdid it. And I don't like this, actually, because I am an employer. I have 15 people in my core team and over 120 experts where we bring them into our companies. And it should be a win for both sides. Yeah. So my employees and my experts should have a huge win that they are working for me and with me. But I, as an employer who is delivering these opportunities to them, should also have the same type of win. So that's how I take this. And it can't be that the employer is just taking advantage of them and just messing with his employees, which is absolutely not okay. But it's also not okay if it's the other way around.
But isn't it true that you're going to have people who perhaps are highly competitive, are highly driven? I'm going to suggest that you are at least one of those based upon the number of companies you started and the passion I see in you today. I'm very competitive and I work for myself. So it doesn't matter. I'm going to outwork everyone just because. And so you're always going to have people like that. Does the European model or the European system that actually protects workers sort of take away from that? And I can't believe it does because you and I are sitting here talking today. Unless you're going to tell me, Tom, I had to come to the land of opportunity to fulfill my dreams as an entrepreneur. Maybe it is. What about that? Don't you always have that difference, just as the difference in people?
You mean from a cultural perspective
Yes.
or from the protection, what we give them or what is out there?
I tie it together because I see that protection as a protection of the right to have a job, absent gross negligence or something very bad. Mm-hmm. And that is the most important thing that a employer can provide or a governmental system can provide. But even within that system, don't you have people like you and me who are highly driven and are very engaged and may become leaders within an organization?
Of course. Then we are back to this 14, 16%. Of course, these are people who have high values for themselves, who are working very hard on themselves, who are very engaged in their private life, who are working on personal development, who really want to make things going, who really want to contribute to something. And then it really comes down what culture the company built already. Because when the culture in a company, and that's also one of the big things what we are doing in the corporations, when you have these highly engaged people, but the culture is supporting more the disengaged and the lazy ones, guess what? The highly engaged people are going to leave your company because they want to be in a growth environment. They want to be in an environment where they are positively challenged, where they can grow, where they can expand, where they can make a career, where they can learn something. Thanks to the universe, we always will have engaged people. But what I also see is that more and more engaged people say bye to the corporate world because a lot of companies did not build this engaged environment, and then people just leave or they start their own thing and they start to work as a freelancer or as a contractor or whatever. At some point they realize, okay, I was so engaged and I hustled like crazy over the last 10 years or 20 years in the corporate world. Okay, where did it get me? Not where I want to be. Okay, now the second half of my life, of my work life, should be different. And let's try entrepreneurship. And we see this in a lot of situations when people start their own companies, what we do in my other companies, that they are just so frustrated from the corporate world. So they are ready to work. They are ready to really make things moving. They really want to engage whatever is needed. But they can't do it or they don't want to do it in the corporate world anymore. And so on the other hand side, when a company is really working hard on building a great culture, it starts with the leaders, and you really need to help them from a personal perspective so that they have the personality to be a great leader and to be able to build an engaging environment. But you also need to give them the tools, so the leadership tools, the management tools, to be able to execute this. And when you think that it is enough to just teach your leaders, oh, these are the leadership tools and this is how communication works and this is how you need to give feedback and all this, I'm sorry, you are wrong, because this is not working anymore. This is not enough anymore to build a really engaged culture and a great corporate culture.
You're one of the few people I have talked to who ties engagement to employee retention. Is it also tied to employee recruitment?
Of course, 100%. 100%.
And I also like that you tied directly to the future of corporations, because I've heard HR persons and employee hiring specialists say in 5 years, employee retention and recruitment will be the key business differentiator. It won't be AI. It won't be a tech solution. It won't be anything but having the best people who are highly engaged. Would that be a fair assessment of what you believe as well?
I think the engagement part and the cultural part will make the difference, not the recruiting part, because the recruiting part will not work without the engagement and the culture. That's the way around. We see this in a lot of situations. For example, I give you an example. In 2022, at the end of 2022, 2023, we did 54 employer branding consulting projects within 18 months in the German-speaking region. All these companies started to work with us because they wanted to have a better recruiting process, because they wanted to be an attractive employer, because they needed more people, recruit great talent. Yeah. At the end of the day, in most companies, we ended up working on the engagement part. And these were the companies who really got it, because you can make great employer branding, but at the end of the day, it's just marketing. And if you're really good at marketing and you can hire great people, and then they start in your company and it doesn't feel like the marketing was, and it doesn't look like the marketing in recruiting was, guess what? Turnover will be there, and they will leave within the first 1 to maximum 6 months. And the interesting part is basically we have the highest turnover in Europe we have in the HR department. Yeah. So that's really interesting. Yeah.
So what are maybe the 2 or 3 top things that you try to communicate when you start a consulting assignment to improve? Do you assess engagement and then from there move to improve it and monitor it and upgrade, or is it a different process?
No, we really talk to the employees actually. Yeah, the ideal process is we developed what we call a CHC process, where we start with an assessment depending on what's the goal of this process? What's the goal of this project? Do they want to become a better employer? Do they want to increase their corporate culture? Do they want to increase leadership development? So based on this assessment, the employees fill out a questionnaire, and then with the result from the questionnaire, we really go into workshops. So we do 8 to 10 people per workshop, per department or per area, and we actually just talk to them and say, hey, listen, what's really the problem here? We saw it in the questionnaires that your department has issues in this or this and this. Okay, explain us. What's the issue? What are you missing in the working place? What can you do different from a personal level? So what could your leader, what could your manager do different? Or what should others do different? So for example, what should other departments do different? What could you do from a delivering perspective, from other companies, from other subsidiaries, from your organization, whatever? Yeah. And so we really focus on 3 dimensions. First of all, and this is where the employee engagement part, why this is so strong when we work with companies, we really ask them, hey, what can you do right now to change things? What is in your own responsibility? What doesn't cost anything, where you do not need to ask for allowance, where you do not need your manager to say yes that you can do. What can you do right now? So that's the first part. Yeah. And the second part, of course, management, leadership from the company. And the third part, where we focus on the processes. And at the end of this day, we get about 60 to 70 different ideas on how to improve this department within just one workshop. And then we have this engagement part, what they can do on their own. We have the leadership part, what the company can implement in leadership training and development programs, what it could be one of the next steps. And we have this focus on the internal processes, what they can implement in organizational development steps in the future. And with these 3 dimensions, what we work, we have a huge advantage, or the company basically have this advantage. If they start to implement these ideas, the employees are 100% on board. Why? Because all these ideas came from the employees and not from the corporate boardroom where somebody thought this might be a good idea. Is this top down and bottom up from the process? Yes, of course. Does it take more time? Yes, of course, it does. Is it the most successful way you can do it? Yes, of course, it is.
How long does this process take, or is it an ongoing sort of perpetual process?
It's an ongoing one, because when you are through this process in one circle, we evaluate, okay, how far did we get with that? And then if the company wants to improve further or has another area where it wants to improve, we do the process again in this area. But the interesting part is, I get this question a lot of times, what you just asked me, okay, is this an ongoing process or how long does it take? And I always ask, okay, how long are you doing marketing for your products? How long are you focusing on sales to get your products sold on the market? How long do you need a CEO or a head of HR in place? And then they start thinking about it and, oh, okay, yeah, you are right. We are doing marketing every single year. And we are focusing on sales every single year. So why should we not focus on employee engagement and about better processes and better culture and leadership every single year?
How do you measure across multiple timeframes? Do you use KPIs? Do you put your own metrics in place? Do you develop them in conjunction with the company? How do you do that part of the assessment?
Yeah, that's a great question. We have multiple levels how we do this. So we focus very strong on KPIs. So of course, all the KPIs, which are pretty simple to measure, which is cost of turnover, which is about, okay, cost per recruiting, sick time, sick leave, and all these things. If the company has these numbers already, otherwise we help them get these numbers. Then we have something implemented, what we call Corporate Health Index, which is a very special KPI, which is based on different KPIs and measurements we get in our projects. And then we also have questions in our assessment where the employees rate themselves or rate this specific topic always on a scale from 1 to 10. So 1 is horrible, 10 is incredible. And so when we do this multiple times, we also see a trend. Yeah, so these are really multiple things. And we also use net promoter scores, how many people would recommend their employer. So these are the more common ones, but we have a lot of different KPIs in place, again, based on the end goal the company wants to achieve. But without this, it's just a wellness activity. Let's say it like that. And that's also the problem why so many companies still don't see the value of programs like that, because they don't know how to measure the results.
I have to write that down.
Please.
Does this program work across multiple industries? Literally from manufacturing to SaaS products to think tanks?
Yes, 100%. And the reason why is because it's focused on the human being and not the industry.
And how about, does it literally work as well in Europe as it does in the United States? We started to talk about the difference in employee bases and perhaps employee mentality. Are people in the United States more open to this, or do you find this works equally as well in Europe?
It works equally. You just need to approach it differently. Yeah. So you basically need to explain it in a different way. You need to frame it. So the package needs to come a little bit different, depending on in which cultural background, mindset, and also continent you are doing it. But it works equally effective.
Stephan, this has been a fascinating discussion, but unfortunately we're near the end of our time. I know it doesn't sound like or feel like 30 minutes, but it has been. Before we leave, I did want to ask you, if our listeners wanted to connect with you perhaps, or find out more about your company, where might be the best place or places for them to go?
Tom, thank you so much. It really was a pleasure to talk to you. And you are right, it doesn't feel like 30 minutes, and we definitely should go on afterwards with our conversation. So the best way to connect with me, and also the fastest way, is actually on LinkedIn. And you can find me with my name, Stephan Poschik, which Stefan is with a P and an H. And my last name is spelled Poschik. So that's basically the easiest way. Or just text me on my mobile phone number. That's 305-504-1123. That's 305-504-1123.
Stephan, I wanted to thank you again. I've really enjoyed myself. I've learned a lot. So we met my 2 metrics.
Perfect. I'm so happy to hear this, Tom. I'm so happy. Thanks again. And yeah, a lot of success.
All right.